Hey Central Baptist, welcome to church this morning. It's great that you can join us and we hope that you and your family are staying safe and staying well. Here are just a few notices that we would like to let you know about just before we begin our online service this morning. First of all, we want to just remind you about the AGM happening on the 1st of December. That's a Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. At church at Central Baptist. We've got some important decisions to make for the life of our family, and we would love it for you to be there and to help us make some of those decisions. Just remember, you are most welcome even if you're not a member of this church. Unfortunately, though, you won't be able to vote at that meeting, however. Secondly, we'd like to remind you that we're looking for some COVID feedback, obviously with the government's move to the traffic light system that has some pretty big implications for the life of our church, and so we're just looking for some feedback from you as to what you think the next few steps forward might be. So you can grab those either online, click the link and fill in the form online, or grab one from the info desk on a Sunday morning. And then lastly, the gummies are back, which is always very, very exciting. We have 5 really important values of our church, and we like to celebrate people that embody those values. So if you've seen somebody really serving God and going great guns for God and doing something pretty cool, we'd love to hear from you. Again, those forms are online, or you can grab them from the help desk. Just remember, you can only nominate one person, please, for one category, not one person for all 5 categories. So just remember that as you make your nominations. So welcome to church. It's great that you're here with us this morning, and we hope that you enjoy our service. Kia ora.
Hi everyone, we're the Phaetons, and this is our Fast 5.
What is one moment on your bucket list?
One thing on my bucket list?
Yeah.
I would love to take our family all the way to New York and have a white, snowy Christmas.
And I would like to spend a night or 2 or 3 in an overwater bungalow somewhere warm, maybe Tahiti, somewhere like that.
What is your favourite family tradition?
My favourite family tradition is cutting down the Christmas tree every Christmas, and then we decorate it, and then we take all our beds, our mattresses off, and take them and we sleep under the Christmas tree.
And mine would be our summer family holiday that we have every year. It's always just a great time to hang out together, relax, and we normally end up going on an adventure somewhere, maybe fishing, something like that.
What is the best advice you have received?
Mine would be die with memories, not dreams.
And mine would be measure twice, cut once. Something that I really need to keep telling myself because I'm not very good at following it.
What is one person in history you would like to spend a day with?
I would really love to go to Holland and spend a day with all my relatives who I haven't met. I would really love to meet my grandparents and my aunties and uncles and all my cousins over there who I haven't met before. That would be a really special day.
Cool. And I wasn't too sure about this one, so I thought I'd choose someone from the Bible, and I thought King Solomon, because he was really wise, and I'm sure that he would have some good advice for us, for me.
What do you love about Jesus?
I love that he loves us no matter what. Always loves us.
And I love that he has a plan and a purpose for each and every one of us. Alright, bye!
Bye!
Kia ora, church whānau. My name's Jono. I'm a YPL student at church. I've been doing this for about a year now. Before YPL, I did an internship for about a year and a half. And while I was doing the internship, I did I did some work part-time in a butchery. And I remember on kind of like the first week, one of the guys asked me like, oh, what are you doing? I said, oh, I was studying to be, I think I said youth pastor because it was easy to explain rather than internship. And he's kind of like, oh, religion and stuff. And I was like, yeah, this one is, and the whole mood of the conversation changed. And he's like, there's two things we don't talk about here. And one of them's club rugby and the other one's religion. I was kind of like, oh, okay, club rugby I can understand because those guys are they're pretty set on who they supported and that kind of stuff. And I wasn't too worried because I was never really into club rugby. But kind of the religion one kind of was like, okay, understand the workplace isn't somewhere to force religion on people, but it's still kind of a weird response. I kind of asked him about it. I was like, oh, why is that one of the unspoken rules? And he's like, oh, we used to have this guy that worked here. He was an ex-pastor, and no one liked him, and he didn't like anyone, and while he worked here, and he's a real Bible basher. And kind of this, first conversation I had around it just kind of he set me up for the rest of the time that I was working there. Kind of decided like, okay, well, I'll keep my religion stuff under wraps. I'll kind of just cruise under the radar with it. And I guess during that time, I laughed at a few too many jokes that I probably wouldn't laugh at normally. And I guess kind of let some things slide that I probably shouldn't have, and that I could have spoken up about in conversations and stuff. But I didn't, because I was worried about what these guys would think of me, and I didn't want to be that guy in the workplace. But we'll come back to that a wee bit later. Over the past few weeks, however, we've been making our way through the book of 2 Timothy. This is one of the last, it's the last letter that Paul wrote before he was executed in Rome. And last week, Jeff talked a wee bit about, your kind of final words and I guess how you'd want them to be important. And the passage that I'm looking at today is chapter 4, which is kind of the beginning of the end, I guess, for Paul. And he's wanting to leave a lasting impression with Timothy. So kind of, getting to the end of the letter, he kind of re-grabs his attention, with a bit of an opener, just make sure that he's got Timothy's attention. And what he writes is this: I solemnly urge you, in the presence of God and Christ Jesus, who will someday judge the living and the dead when he comes to set up his kingdom. Preach the word of God, be prepared, whether the time is favourable or not. Patiently correct, rebuke, and encourage your people with good teachings. Now, Paul opens up with a bit of a heart stopper, which is reminding Timothy that God's coming back one day. When he comes back, he's going to judge the living and the dead, which is a pretty, scary thing to say. But what Paul's doing is he's reminding Timothy of the bigger picture. The reason that he's reminding him of this bigger picture is because Timothy is a young youth pastor. Sorry, not youth pastor. He's a young pastor. He's in this church in Ephesus, which is kind of this trade hub, which means that there's all sorts of people, I guess, in this region. There's all sorts of religions. There's all sorts of temples, all sorts of worship, all sorts of cults and sects, SECTS, and stuff like that. And there was also teachers going around that would, I guess, sell their, talent. They'd, teach people for money, but it wasn't anything good. It was stuff that would just, make you seem a wee bit smarter at dinner parties, or would be able to, argue a certain point a wee bit better than your fellow that hadn't been taught yet. And that's kind of what these guys were offering. I can imagine that it would have been super tempting for Timothy to lean this way, to kind of, yeah, I guess kind of with what he was teaching, the Bible to evangelize, I guess it would have been really tempting for him to just kind of go towards this path of, be a wee bit more charismatic or a wee bit more, I guess, have a wee bit of a nicer message rather than a super confronting one of Jesus is coming back, he's going to judge the living and the dead. Would have kind of, I guess, shifted it around to make it a wee bit nicer to get, I guess, more people listening or a bigger congregation. But Paul's trying to warn him off this, trying to say, hey, don't do that. That's not what you need to be doing. You need to stick to the truth. Which is quite scary, because we know from experiences growing up that the truth can actually be quite terrifying. And, generally, if you're speaking to someone, you've kind of what you're saying is true if there's a bit of a reaction from them. I don't think I've ever, fessed up to someone or told the truth to someone and they're just, thank you for telling me. There's generally like a emotional response, or, whether it's like, what, I can't believe you've done that, or like, hey, thanks for telling me this, like, I feel really, honoured. There's an emotional response to the truth. And generally, I guess we associate that with like a negative thing, which is why we lie. Because we don't want to tell people the truth because we know it'll possibly hurt them and they might get angry at us and it can hurt relationships. One example that I have of this that is on the first day that I had my restricted, I drove down to young adults, which is only just down the road, but man, it was like first day of driving by myself and, Mum, can I take the car? Yes, awesome, let's go. And on my way back coming in, I turned in too sharply and I heard like the back of the car scrape along the hedge, and I kind of get home, and then a few minutes later Elias comes up and he goes, someone's hit the mailbox. And straight away, like, I knew that it was me, but I didn't say anything. Mum asked me like, oh, was it you? And I was like, no, it wasn't me. I just kind of, because Mum really liked that mailbox. If you've ever been to a house, it's probably about like just a wee bit taller than waist high. It's got a nice red part on the front of it, and just kind of sitting in the hedge there. We liked it so much that we matched the house colour scheme and door to it, or the other way around, I'm not sure which. But I knew Mum really loved this mailbox, so I didn't tell her. And we get down there, and I was like, oh, there was not a lot of time between me coming home and Elias coming home, so someone must have done like a hit and run and driven off, and and I was like, oh yeah, they must have. That's weird. And a few days later, Mum was like looking at the car. She's oh, there was a few wee scratches on here, and she's like, you sure you didn't hit it? I was like, no, I didn't hit it. Anyway, about 3 or 4 months later, she finally found out, and it wasn't because I chose to tell her. It's because I forgot that I had told her that I hadn't. And it's kind of just like got to that point where we got past it, and I was like, oh, I know if I say something now, it'll be fine. And it's kind of said it, and then even still, there was like a reaction. I was like, what? I can't believe you told me and didn't tell me. Sorry, not hit me on the head, but like kind of slap on the arm. Like, she reacted a lot better than what I thought she was. But we think the truth is scary. And I guess as Christians, we kind of know that it's a bit scary because we've probably had times that we've told people the bare truth of the Bible, and for non-Christians it can be quite confronting. So they kind of choose not to hear it, or they'll walk away from it, which is something that Paul goes on to warn Timothy about. He tells him in verse 3, for a time is coming when people will no longer listen to sound and wholesome teaching. They will follow their own desires and will look for teachers who will tell them whatever their itching ears want to hear. They will reject the truth and chase after myths. Now, finding the truth in this day and age is becoming harder and harder to do. We live in an age where, I guess, truth is, less absolute. It's more open to scrutiny and opinion. And, what's your truth isn't my truth. But that doesn't make, and just because we disagree, just because you have a different view doesn't make my truth any less, valid. So the line between what's true and what's false, fact and fiction, is becoming really blurry. It's become really hard to say definitely this is true. In a time where we can access infinite, information, like that, in our pocket, hasn't helped. It's actually probably helped in the other way, in terms of people can now, get their opinions out there and say that it's truth. And if you're on the other end of the screen, you don't actually know if it's true or not. You don't know what research people have done, or it's just becoming really hard, and people are finding stuff that someone wrote on a whim or as an opinion, and they're grabbing it and they're holding on to it as truth. And so we really need to be careful to who and to what we're listening to, and to what we're allowing us to believe is truth. At Young Adults, we've kind of been going through a bit of a series, I guess, called Truth. And we started off by watching this Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma, which talks about Facebook and social media, and I guess the algorithms that it uses. And I've never been super worried about, like my data and I guess privacy and all that kind of stuff. And if someone wants to look through my camera and see my pocket, I'm not too worried about that. That's just me personally. But some of the stuff in there, like, genuinely I found concerning. And there's just all the stuff about these algorithms that they have, in terms of you have one person here that you'll search something here, and then the algorithms will be, oh, you search this, so it gives you all these things that relate to this search, and then if you look at these things, I'll give you all these things that relate to this search and that search, and you end up bouncing down this rabbit hole until you get to like this really tiny spot. And we just get like tunnel vision, and we can just be, I guess, fended into this one lane of thinking. It becomes really easy to surround ourselves by our own voice and by our own thoughts and ideas. And now I could honestly go on about this for ages, and probably, well, not make a whole nother sermon, but there's a lot that I could unpack here. But I'll save that for another time, or a conversation, if you want to have it with me. And at Young Adults, we kind of, moved on from social media to talking about conspiracy theories a few meetings later. And again, we could have been there forever talking about conspiracy theories and actually what conspiracy theories exist. And then, again, days talking about how conspiracy theories come about and why they're a thing and how they keep going. And it's just because social media is this place where people can, I guess, surround themselves with like-minded people that all have this one truth that they surround themselves by. I guess an example of that is, flat earthers will go and search out other flat earthers, and they all talk to each other and confirm their own belief that the earth is flat, and there's not really a lot of, I guess, diversity in that conversation, and they're just solidifying themselves in their thinking. Kind of these echo rooms or these echo chambers that, I guess, keep people boxed in with what they want to think. And now we kind of can look around the world and see extreme cases of this happening. And one very extreme case is QAnon, a thing over in America. Now, I don't know everything about it. I'm not an expert on this, so I'm not going to try and explain it. But one example of what happened is these Q supporters gathered on the grassy knoll where supposedly JFK was shot from, and the reason they were there is because they believed that JFK Jr., who had died in a plane crash in 1999, wasn't dead, but was going to come back, I guess, to the world to prove that he's not dead, and then reinstate Trump as president. Which I can't even begin to get my head around that and how that works, but anyway, that's what happened. And I'd really like to say that this is only an American thing, but it's not. In New Zealand at the moment, we have these vaccine debates, whether they're pro-vax or anti-vax. I'm not here to make a stand on one or the other, but I'm not going to pretend to be a medical person because I'm not. I don't actually know much about either side, but there's people that, there's arguments on both sides, and people saying ours is true, no, ours is true, yours is wrong, no, yours is wrong, and it's just a lot of, I guess, white noise out there that it becomes really difficult for people to actually find out what is true. And I'd love to leave these examples as things that are happening with people outside of Christianity, but actually it's a really big thing in Christianity at the moment. I'm not a podcast person, but one of the podcasts that I have listened to is The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. And it's about this mega church that's over in America and this guy Mark Driscoll, who is the head preacher or pastor. And pretty much they interview, I guess, people that were part of it and who kind of fallen out of it and whose kind of lives have been affected by it. And kind of at some stage in the interview, there's always like kind of a similar thing in terms of like, no one questioned this guy. No one actually stopped to think about what this guy was saying or what he was doing. And the fallout was huge. But people listened to him because what he said sounded nice to them. It sounded pleasing, even though it wasn't the truth. He made it sound nice, so they accepted it as truth. I guess, it's just something to think about. Is what we're listening to the truth, or does it just sound nice and we just take comfort in it and think that it's true? Paul goes on to end his instructions to Timothy with this. You should keep a clear mind in every situation. Don't be afraid of suffering for the Lord. Work at telling others the good news and fully carry out the ministry God has given you. Now, when I was working in the butchery, about 6 months into it, I found out that I was talking to another guy, and I found out that actually the guy that I had talked to actually just didn't like this guy that he had told me about. And as a result of that one guy, I'd kind of kept my Christianity under the radar. I didn't want to talk to anyone about it because in fear of upsetting them. And I guess kind of once I figured out that actually this is just this one guy's opinion on this one guy, and actually other people, they were fine with him and they were fine actually talking about it. And later on, I actually had some really good conversations with some people. And the initial conversations that I did have, however, were just really like surface level stuff, because I was worried about what they would think. This is something that Paul's trying to warn Timothy not to do, to not sugarcoat the truth because of what other people will think. Because like I said before, it's scary and people can be put off by it, but actually you can't sugarcoat the truth, because then it starts to not become the truth, or it becomes part of the truth, which isn't the whole truth. I guess kind of one of these examples that of a hard truth is actually going to church isn't everything about being a Christian. Actually, I know it's rough to hear, and I'm sure some people kind of sitting there getting kind of antsy because it can be a rough message to hear. And actually, we need to, we can kind of go about saying that, I'm going to church, that makes me good. That means I'm a Christian. You can kind of sugarcoat it like that and I guess let people think that, but actually that's not the truth. We need to speak the truth, and I guess the whole truth. That truth is Jesus in the Bible and what he has to say. And that comes from the bigger picture, that comes from knowing that Jesus will come back, and knowing that he's left us with stuff to actually keep us going until then, to actually a truth to live by until he comes back. And that truth can be scary, which is actually how we know it's true, because the truth doesn't pick sides. It doesn't choose what's nice and leave out the bad stuff. It's actually alright to be scared of it though. And we need to be aware of who we're listening to. We need to make sure that what we're listening to is the truth and not stuff that we just want to hear. And lastly, I just leave you with this: is we need to speak the truth. We need to make sure that what we're speaking to people is the truth, and that we're not sugarcoating it. Because the truth is powerful, and if you give people part truth, then it's only part powerful. So it's just something to, I guess, think about going into this week. Hope you guys have a really good week, and if anything pops out of this, obviously this is through a camera, but be keen to have a conversation with people. If something is found confronting, then have a yarn to someone about it.